The final team in the Southwest Division, the San Antonio Spurs. Notable moves include they traded DeJounte Murray and Jock Landale to the Hawks for Danilo Gallinari, who they waived. Charlotte's 2023 first. It's top 16 protected next year, then lottery protected the following 2 seasons before. Does that just extinguish or does it become 2 seconds? I should really look that up. But that's the protections on it. They also acquired Atlanta's 2025 first-round pick, unprotected. They have swap rights with Atlanta in 26, unprotected, and then Atlanta's 2027 first-round pick, unprotected. They drafted Jeremy Sohan at number 9, drafted Malachi Branham at number 20, drafted Blake Wesley at number 25. They signed Kelvin Johnson to a 4-year, $74 million extension. There's $1.5 million per year in unlikely incentives. That could bring that up to a 4-year, $80 million deal. They claimed Isaiah Roby off waivers. And they traded the number 38 pick, which was Kennedy Chandler, to the Grizzlies for the Lakers' 2024 second-round pick and $1 million in cash. Should I go in depth on why I like that Kennedy Chandler trade? Because who knows what the Lakers look like in 2024? That could be a number 31 pick.
No, we agree on that.
And then they're notable. Oh, they signed Dominic Barlow to a 2-way contract and signed Jordan Hall to a 2-way contract. Notable exits, aside from Murray, obviously, Lonnie Walker IV signed with the Lakers. Grant, what did you give the Spurs?
This is a flat A. I'm not giving A pluses. This is as high as I go. The only way I could imagine someone, maybe you'll prove me wrong, thinking this is anything less than like an A minus is if you just really can't get over not having Lonnie Walker back for another year to like tantalize for a minute and then be bad for 3 weeks. The Murray trade, like I get it. It sucks if you're a Spurs fan on some fronts because like this is your best player. He's coming off just a ridiculous season. Probably if you're only a fantasy player, you're like, how could they possibly trade this guy? But to do it at the right time, because the logic of an extension didn't make sense. So he was going to get to unrestricted free agency. And then you're facing, this is granted, like this is down the road a little bit, 2 years, but you're talking about maxing him out. I like him a lot. I don't know if that would have made sense. So to get this haul of picks, awesome. To get Keldon Johnson locked down to that number, especially like, I mean, with the cap going, even if the cap were staying flat, that's just like an absolute phenomenal signing or phenomenal extension. With it going up,
by Clutch Sports too. I couldn't believe he signed that deal.
It's a joke. I just don't understand how you were able to keep him for so little. And like the big picture thing, I like Sohan a lot. The big picture thing is now like you're in the Victor Wembanyama pole position, or you have the ability
the pole position.
Like that is like you are in position to suck worse than any other team, or at least you're in the mix. They gotta be one of those bottom 3 teams, I think, or bottom 4. And like that's just how you flip this around. So, and credit to the Spurs, because the Spurs historically have not done this. Like, and the last time they really did it, it yielded Tim Duncan, and it required some luck. But like this is the time to do it. I'm glad they finally did it. It hurts to lose Murray, but like. This like macro, micro, any way you want to look at this, I think they just did the right stuff.
Yeah, they got an A for me too. I don't know what you would dislike about their offseason. Like I said, unless you think should they have taken someone else at 20 and 25 or even at number 9. I really like the Jeremy Sohan pick. I do think it looks a little bit worse now that Chip Anglin's not there anymore. Yeah. I was counting on him to help with the jump shot, but just as someone who's a ball mover, connective tissue on offense, and can defend a whole bunch of different spots on defense, I love the theory of him. And there's just, even let's say the Hawks, it works out for Atlanta, and it might, because DeJounte Murray and Trae Young and Clint Capella and John Collins and Deion, that's a shit ton of talent. Mm-hmm. But you have all those pick commitments scaling past DeJounte Murray's current contract.
Yep.
That is big. And the other thing is just like, they will be valuable in subsequent trades just as a concept before they even convey. And I think the bigger value here is you clarified your direction. And you're not in that middle part of the NBA anymore. And to me, I understand that teams are run as a business and that it's not championship or bust for everybody. But if I'm a fan, this is how I would root for teams. It's how I do root for my teams. That is my goal. I don't care what market I'm in. Like, I want to see them building towards something. And this is why, as a Knicks fan, as a beleaguered Knicks fan, I would rather see them take the long, not circuitous path, but like a long semi-direct route where it's like, oh, they're trying to build something. The Spurs are now clearly doing that. And even if you don't think that their next pole star is on this team, and let's be honest, of Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, or Josh Primo are probably the top candidates for that. their best chance at acquiring a Polestar is probably in the future with one of their draft picks. That's fine, because now your draft stock is going to be high enough that you're in the cornerstone territory and you're not constantly relying on these mid to late lottery picks or just mid to late first rounders in general. And the other thing here is just like, maybe you feel differently if DeJounte Murray was willing to sign an extension, but he wasn't, because you had him on a steal of a deal in the first place, that 120% raise in advance of what his max salary would have been. There was no chance he was going to sign a deal. And then you get yourself, you have to start thinking, oh, well, if we're going to pay him all this money, you're kind of capping your ceiling if you weren't able to find that actual, what you needed was DeJounte Murray's functional superior, not even his equal. I think when you get into a conversation about the Wizards with Beal, or maybe even the Bulls with Zach LaVine, you're not necessarily looking, or whatever team lines up with Donovan Mitchell, you're not necessarily looking for a player better than any of them. You want their equal. In the Spurs case with DeJounte Murray, they needed someone who was better than him to really chart that championship course. And so I like everything that they did here. And look, they have not played all the arrows in their quiver just yet. They could be a sneaky Russell Westbrook destination. If they have cap space, they have Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott. If you're the Lakers, look about how much money you save. Would you give up 2 first-round picks for that type of a deal? And you're still conserving your cap space for 2023 for the most part, even though Doug McDermott would be on the books. But I like that the Spurs finally chose a direction. I think the one thing you could look at and say, well, it really feels like this is going to be Greg Popovich's last year. Now we know he's not going to be fielding a competitive team. There's like some, regret there. At the same time, he appears reinvigorated by coaching youngsters. He seems to be loving it. And 2, unless you were going to go all in for Mitchell or be the team that went after Durant, you weren't going to have this team that was worthy of Greg Popovich's last year necessarily.
No, and it's his decision, right? Like he must have signed off on all this, and that's fine. The other thing is too, like the goal, and I think the way they've set themselves up is to be bad, right? But I think like you've still got, just not that this is necessarily a factor in the grade, it's just something I would be concerned about if my team did this. I'm still going to watch, because I really want to see what Josh Primo does with a chance to kind of explore the space. I want to see if Kelvin Johnson takes another step. I want to see if Vassell looks like a real 3-and-D, like this is going to be a guy, on the next really great Spurs team. There's what kind of a defender is Sohan going to be against NBA players? Like, is he going to be as good as ever? Is he another piece that's going to be there when Wembanyama is your number one guy and you've got all these guys around him? Is he going to? So like, there's tons of reasons to stay invested, which is like almost never the case in a rebuild that's as thorough as this one looks like it's going to be, or it looks like it already sort of is, because they're set now. Like even if they don't do anything with all that cap space, which I assume they will, like this is a solid. If we started grading like foundations or like paths forward or like 5 years away power rankings or asset pools, like the Spurs are right there. This is a sweet position to be in. So even one of the worst aspects of this situation, which is normally like an unwatchable product, is just not at play right now. So yeah, I think it's an A, and like, I would love to hear the case for less than an A if somebody had one.
Maybe like an A- because, they didn't trade Jakob Poeltl or something. But like they could still do that and probably will, although maybe he ends up being really cheap and they just keep him. But I'm enamored with where they go from here. And I think, to your point, they're going to be fun to watch. They were last year. They had the fastest average offensive possession time in the league. I will say it wasn't always pretty, but like they're kind of built to play with more speed now. I don't think DeJounte Murray slowed them down by any stretch, but they're like complete anarchy when you look at their pecking order. Like it's Josh Primo. They gave more ball screens to Devin Vassell after the Derek White trade. They really might try and plumb him as a half-court creator now. Jeremy Sohan, I'm assuming, gets a lot of playing time. And he also, I think Malachi Branham should wind up getting more playing time than Blake Wesley. I don't know between them, but Malachi Branham's like sort of that swing prospect where everything could go wrong and he'll look awful, but that's someone who could probably put up points and tough shots in a hurry. I'm just fascinated by what they're doing now. And I think it was probably the overdue call to make, but they made it, and it's important that they did.
And maybe it's timed right, because maybe Wembanyama really is what is as advertised. And maybe this is the year to take your shot. The last thing is, I think too, with Murray, like he was good enough to where you did have to make considerations about the pieces you put around him because of his shooting limitations. And just like, he's an uncommon player. like a primary ball handler that's still just the suspect shooter off the catch and off the bounce, especially. But he's an all-star. So to sort of clean the slate by saying like, we are no longer having to consider, well, do all these other positions have enough shooting to compensate for our primary ball handler being sketchy in that area? Like now you're just best player available all the time. Like that's just, you can just get away with that. So I also like that freedom.